people coming back. We're all really quiet as Bree arrives.
So welcome everybody. Bienvenue, Annie. We're very happy to have you with us today in this session. I'm going to share my screen. My name is Hilary Inwood. I'm lead of environmental and sustainability at OISE, and we're very happy to welcome you into this session today. I'm very proud of the Action Research team members that are going to be presenting. And so this is really a moment of joy for me to share their incredible work. I'm sharing screens. As we go along, please feel free to pop whatever you'd like into the chat, questions or comments. We really like this to be as interactive a session as possible, and so we'll take questions throughout, and we would really welcome your participation in this session. So with that in mind, we'll get underway. This is part of the water education stream, pun intended, of the conference, and we're looking forward to hearing how practicing teachers implement this work in their classrooms. So as a starting point, we are going to do a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional territory upon which the conference is being hosted. For many thousands of years, the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas, Nishizaugig of the Credit, have sought to walk gently on this land. This territory is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources and lands around the Great Lakes. This acknowledgement signals our desire to seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and deep respect. And it's a starting point for all of us to remind us to enact this work in our personal and professional lives. So welcome. You're in the session called Natural Collaborations. It's exploring teachers' action research in environmental education. And I'm very happy to welcome you on behalf of our presenters, Han Liang Hu, Adrienne Rigler, Catherine Kritz, and Linda Ryan. And I'll be introducing each of them individually just before we start. But we thought we'd foreground just a little bit for you about what the action research team is about. It's I think, quite unique. And so far, I think it's quite unique in the world, which is really exciting. Unless people are running these things and not writing about them, I suppose that's entirely possible. But we would like to, as part of this session, just to get you to introduce yourselves in the chat in relationship to the territory that you're on and also the organization that you work with. So why action research for teachers? Teachers, we know, are incredibly busy individuals, especially during the pandemic. This has been a time of overload for teachers across the country. And so action research seems like an add-on. But I should tell you that we started this work before the pandemic began. And I know that you'll see some of our teachers have tried their best to keep it going during this pandemic, but it's been challenging, no doubt. And for some, they've had to take a pause from their action research, and that's understandable too. Action research is important for teachers for a couple of reasons. It certainly does contribute to evidence-based practice in education, and particularly in environmental and sustainability education. We want teachers' voices as part of that. We don't want policy and practice being set by academics in universities who sometimes have very little connection to the realities of classrooms. So this is a way to honor teachers' roles in educational research and to truly involve their voices in it. It certainly is a great way, we've discovered, to support collaborations between teachers and researchers, both of who work in different settings and bring different benefits, I think, to research. And certainly it helps to encourage teachers, and I would say myself as well as a researcher, to be critical and reflective. It certainly helps researchers to be grounded in the realities of K-12 education. And I think it's a great way to help to develop ongoing action to improve teaching and learning generally. And it certainly helps to cultivate leadership of our team members, and I think others too. We consider them to be teacher researchers. That's what we refer to them as, and it helps them to develop their leadership and to share what they know in a wide variety of settings. This conference is just one example. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, action research does have a cycle to it. It's been around since the 40s. Kurt Lewin was one of the first who instituted this work, but it's been instituted in many different settings, but education is just one of those. When you identify a research question, you plan some action around it, You act and observe. That's your data collection phase when you're acting, and you're acting as a participant observant as part of that as well. So you're actually engaged in delivering the action as well as observing what has happened as part of that. You start to take critical reflection on the action itself. And of course, this is cyclical. So one thing that you do informs the whole next spiral that you go through. And I would say that many teachers that I know anyway are involved in this research cycle, but they sometimes don't even know it. It's an iterative cycle of improvement in educational practice. And action research gives a name to that type of work that goes on. And my experience has been that quality teachers who have been around for a long time do this quite routinely, and it's really part of their reflection on their practice. Now, we have an amazing action research team that I'm involved in. It's jointly run by the Toronto District School Board, as well as by OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. We've got about 14 members, and these are just some of our members in this photograph. It's really hard to get everybody in the same place at the same time for a photo. And I'm really pleased to be having 4 members of the team today speak about their research. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to introduce you to the first of 4 members of the team, Han Liang, who has been an absolute pleasure to work with on this team. I can't tell you, she is an amazing go-getter when it comes to conducting research in her kindergarten classrooms. She's been working for 20 years in educational settings. She holds a Master's of Education and a Master's of Arts. And she has her specialist qualification in environmental education. She did that through our additional qualification courses that are being run through OISE. She's been through all 3 parts, which meant 3 years of study in her summers on that, which has been pretty remarkable. In fact, I'm going to tell you that all of our presenters today have been through that additional qualification specialist system. As an early childhood educator, Han Liang has been conducting action research in nature-based and environmental education in kindergarten settings. So Han Liang, we're thrilled to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Hilary. Today I'm going to talk about my action research in the kindergarten program from 2018 to present. So since I work with young students at school, I always put that age and developmental appropriate practice and research in my mind. So let me highlight my research. My focus is on nature-based and environmental education in the kindergarten program. It's quantitative research. I use triangulation research methods. So from this side, you can see research methods I used. So use lesson plan, use students' work, sometimes photos, sometimes I make a little bit video clips. Definitely I use observation notes and journal entries. The purpose of research is deepen relationship with nature in connection with the kindergarten curriculum. Also integrate the importance and interconnectedness of all life on Earth. So that's I would like to do for our youngest students at school, but also I thinking about it, provide an indigenous perspective and the ways of engaging with the learning process that it is critical for younger students too. So that's why I weaving indigenous ways of knowing into the kindergarten program in relation to the land. The first year, 2018 to 2019, its topic is about nature-based loose parts play in connection with the 4 Friends of Kindergarten program 2016. Data connection definitely is in-person learning data collection. Then when we think about it, when we work in our urban city school, we faced some urban density issue, just like Dr. Junior talk about our urban planning things. So we face the urban density, high-rising building and construction, and also the shrinkage of nature and green space. Obviously, students lack the natural environment and green space to play around outside, but inside, they also have limited access to explore natural loose parts and real-world learning indoor too. So that's why my key research question is, how can I infuse nature-based loose pad play with kindergarten students in learning in connection with the 4 friends of kindergarten curriculum? I have already completed 2 cycles. So the 2 cycles combined together, it's bring outdoors inside and taking learning outside. I started setting up an invitation for environmental learning, and students create and design by nature-based loose pad play. You know that the natural material evokes students' interest in, they came up with different ideas of nature inquiry. And also we grow plants from its roots to investigate how plants grow indoor and what they need inside the environment. And then we take learning outside. When we take a learning outside, we explore the nature through senses and seasons, especially in winter. We have a nature play with snow or without snow, just compare that the seasons change, how they play around outside, how learning happen in that environment. So when I consider about planning and I think about it, outside plus inside is equal to. So here's the Belton in his research talk about outside it's a half whole with the inside being the other half. So it's much easier to plan if the 2 areas are seen as integral, not separate. So when you think about like even outdoors is a 3rd environment, the 3rd teacher to teach us, to teach young students how they learn, how they are learning happen in that environment. So this is a 2018, 2019, the first year. So the second year, 2019 to 2020, the topic is about integrated nature journey through project-based environmental learning approach. So the data connection, it's pre-COVID and post-COVID data connection. Definitely around this year, the COVID have already changed the way we learn with the research. And then when I think about my key research question, I consider all those things incorporate the students' learning and in my research and in my practice. So my key research question, the second year, I changed the approach to fit in the research context. So how can I integrate nature journey into the kindergarten program through project-based environmental learning approach? When I think about a project-based environmental learning approach, I really want to my students be active and get engaged, learning hands-on stuff. So even the research evidence shows that the project-based learning approach in environmental education empowers children's learning as active participants and involve their in-depth investigation and environmental learning topic. So that really empower me and empower my students to do that project, and also incorporate a weekly nature journey. So I also did the 2 cycles too, completed 2 action research cycle, because COVID changed the way we learn, we teach, and we do the action research. The first cycle, I apply environmental project into the program, into the research. I evoke the students' interest in through the project-based approach. I used our existing playground, play yard, and green grounds. So, but the second term, because everything has already changed, we moved to remote learning. We use Google Classroom. So I replanned everything and reconnected with students, rebuild relationship with the students and relationships. even incorporate with families members and as their partnership and help make that learning happen for our younger students. Here's I put 4 major projects there. It's connecting nature throughout seasons, project learning tree, the upcycling and recycled project, the birds feeder project. I think the 4 projects are interconnected and interrelated throughout the whole things. Then students, based on the project, they go outside and to do weekly nature journey. Based on the project, they got that sense of idea, they got a sense of prior knowledge, and to use that to go outside and immerse themselves in nature and to do nature journey. Then I introduce to you some student sample nature journey that did a really fantastic job. They are really engaged, they got hooked in nature and with nature. So the first one is choose 4 elements of medicine wear interconnected with nature. Support students to explore nature from an indigenous lens and see the interrelationships between self and the natural world. And this is about saving water to our earth and then learn the water, the trees, the earth, and then in the ecosystem. So they think about who and what needs water on earth and how to save the water. You can see, look at here, the journaling. You can see the words, they put ideas there. And the bottom, this first one, it's a city spot nature journal. Shows a students spending time in silent observation and involved in sensory engagement, drawing and writing what was observed in nature. So that's city spot. That last one is adopt a tree nature journal. So the students choose a tree, study and journey its life, and develop a greatest understanding of the environment. So this is our students' sample. But I really want to talk about what I have learned from all those years with the whole team with Hilary. So the process allows me to experience problem solving, to make it the moderate for my students. I learned to connect data to diagnose the problem, search for solution, take action, and monitor well and how well the action worked. Also, action research projects influence my thinking skill, sense of efficacy, willingness to share and communicate, attitudes towards the process of change. You think you need to change yourself and change the ideas. And through action research, I learned about myself, my students, my action research team in collaboration, and determine ways to continue or improve. Thank you so much. So I will pass to Andrea to talk about her action research.
Thank you so much, Han Liang. Han Liang, what you've accomplished is really significant. And I have to tell you that Han Liang, in her spare time for fun, writes up her, say for fun, because writing for me is a tortured process, writes up her action research for journals. In fact, she's got 2 articles out for review right now. So Han Liang, congratulations on all of the work you've done. And we so appreciate you doing this work in kindergarten, because it tends to not get maybe as much research time as it could have. And I think what you're doing is really significant. So thank you. If you have any questions for Han Liang, feel free to pop them into the chat and she can address them directly, or we can address them at the end, whichever you prefer. So I'd like to introduce the next teacher researcher to you from the TDSB OISE Action Research Team, and that's Adrienne Rigler. And I've had the pleasure of working with Adrienne for many, many years. She's been an associate teacher, taking countless students for practicum for us in OISE's teacher ed programs. And she's just been such a pleasure to work with. Adrienne's a teacher researcher at Ryerson Community School. That's not the same as Ryerson University. It's actually a K-8 TDSB school in Toronto. She's currently leading and learning alongside a class of grade 6 students. She's been researching effective practices of water education in her classroom for the past 6 years and working with university researchers both in Canada and in China. Adrienne, welcome.
Thank you. I'm getting up my sharing and I'm going to hope thumbs up that I am sharing.
You are. We can see it. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. I apologize. I do generally keep my camera on, but I have a lot of difficulty with, go away. I just want to present. Thank you. I clicked the wrong button. I have difficulty with my sound and my timing with these computers. So I tend to talk but ahead of my voice. So it echoes a lot. So I'm going to keep my camera turned off and just talk to you quickly about the work that I've done to build connections to water issues to promote stewardships in an elementary school in Toronto. My own history in water education began when I was just a child. I was the daughter of a freshwater biologist and followed in his pathway studying ecology and then evolutionary ecology at my master's level, and then began teaching. Oh my goodness, I forgot to update this. I'm now at 23 years of teaching in the TDSB, and throughout that time, I've spent all 23 years working in an inner city school in the heart of downtown Toronto. My interest, I've always been interested in water education, but my real commitment to water education in the school began when I became involved with a sister school partnership with a school in Shanghai. They are situated on the Huangpu River, and the Huangpu River was extremely polluted, and it ran right within a 2-minute walk of the school. So when the students were out doing excursions and things, they would see this, I mean, the original pictures are quite kind of like Toronto Harbourfront looks in their views recently. But the pollution in the river was tremendous, and the school then took on a commitment to water education and established a water culture in the school. And when I began working with them, we looked at ways that we could build that same water culture, a commitment to water culture and water education in our own school. We developed the shared water culture by celebrating 6 World Water Days together, starting in 2015. The collaboration was what inspired me to complete my environmental education specialist certificate at OISE. And from that, of course, came the wonderful invitation from Hilary to participate in the Action Research team. And as she mentioned earlier, her selling point for me was that I was already engaged in research in my practice. And I agree, but Action Research actually helped to formalize and give structure and validity to my inquiry. So my decision was based on 3 real factors. One, I believe that I should go to the next slide. Sorry, those are just some images from World Water Day where students create activities, and they were shared with our sister school, but also with our school community and schools around surrounding the school. I believe it's my responsibility to teach environmental education, and I was already involved in a number of research opportunities and found that those were the most meaningful professional development experiences that I was having. They were the ones that directly impacted my teaching practice and had certainly a significant role in my students' learning. And again, it gave me that opportunity to collaborate and share best practices with the other members of the research team. My research question, and I've gone back a couple of times to try to reword it, but the actual definition of your question is kind of critical in terms of keeping it very focused. And so my question was, how do I support students' connections to water issues that can result in student participation in collaborative action projects? And basically, I'd observed that my students were engaged in learning about the environment. They were really excited to be in my class and be part of the water culture. But the level of stewardship, for example, their willingness to participate in an eco-school program or to make changes in terms of, helping other students to recycle and compost, remained low. And I wanted to discover ways to empower students to make changes in our school community. The question that I came up with was supported obviously by all the members of the team. My data collection through 2018, 2019, and 2017, 2018, involved student journals, observations, and work samples. I'd also had initially planned to do interviews in the research area, but one of the things I've learned is that, with the time commitment for interviews, it was really challenging. But also I found that students, when I was asking them questions in interviews, there seemed to be a perception that they needed to have a right answer. And I think that the idea of just, someone being interested in just what they're thinking was always when it came to doing. So if I removed myself from doing a personal interview where they looked like they wanted to please me to a paper task, then it became more of I need to have a correct answer. So I limited that then to just observe personal observations of students during activities, their journals, and their work samples. Here are just some of the sample journal questions that I've asked them. The initial one was just, what do you know about water? And then the second one that I focused on a little bit more in terms of trying to look at a way to connect with their own world experiences. So what do children already have? How can I enhance their connection to water through their own personal experiences? And then the other question was, if you could do any water action based on the activities that you participated in, what action might you take? And that was a question that I would use after perhaps we've been a field trip or we've been on a community walk and looking at, for example, water in our community. So some observations from those 2 years. In 2017, 2018, I was working with 2 grade 8 classes, and we were looking at water memories. This is just so this was approximately 70 to 75 students. I should have had my sample size on there, but there's no statistical analysis done here. But I just kind of had a look at what their own memory experiences were. And interestingly enough, at that time, so it was been in the 3rd year, or we'd had 2 years of World Water Day actually at that point, 15% of the students actually cited one of their favorite water experiences as being attending one of the World Water Day events at school. About 50% had some sort of a natural water experience, but 33% had only an indirect water memory. And I qualified those indirect memories as things that were, so for example, going to a water park, or some of them enjoyed the water table in kindergarten. Someone had even talked about eating popsicles as being a great water memory of a cold popsicle on a summer day. So, only about half the class had actually had experiences outside of the urban environment, or even within the urban environment, engaging, say, at the Humber River or the Don River. Similar story, but even more balance, even less experience in a natural water experience the following year when I was teaching grade 5. This was a much smaller sample size. I only had 27 students this year, but again, their experiences around rivers, lakes, and ponds, and were very, very small. And the majority were, Niagara Falls was a very big one. The public swimming pool was big. And we then took, with the grade 8 students, we actually, to try to honor and bring in and to respect their own experiences and their own knowledge. That year I had the students for World Water Day create an activity based on their water experiences. And the students would, we had a number of them, but this was just 3, looking at, this ice sculpture building from the students that were, the student that liked eating popsicles. This is a canoeing experience where we built a canoe, and around the corner is land that they created. And this is the water table that they recreated for World Water Day for the students. Throughout all of the activities had to have some sort of an environmental lesson or connection to, I just saw my time. So a connection to water education. These are just some evidence from student work. This is actually work that was completed by a student that was, some students that were not in my class, but had participated in organizing a World Water Day event, had been in my class prior to me starting the action research. And in their year when they were, this isn't a language assignment, but a number of the students that were in my class chose to use water issues and climate change issues as part of their mason jar project, in which they highlight an issue that's a great concern to them and present that in the form of of a mason jar model and to bring public awareness to their concerns. And this just highlights one student's work. This is her, she's in this picture here, originally in 2015, cleaning, her project then was to clean oil off of feathers. And then she was the one, she created an Antarctic is Dying mason jar project in 2017. She returned to my class in 2018 and did another project on the invasive fish species for World Water Day. And at the bottom here is a button that I was traveling to Shanghai to meet with my sister school partners in 2018. And she asked me if she could she wanted to make a button. I didn't know what for. And she returned with this picture of a water lily. Whoops, I said one more. This water lily, and said that she wanted to share it with the students that we had been collaborating with on World Water Day. And she asked me to take it to them to thank them for working with us on our World Water Day. This year, as we said, has been challenging. I have had my students involved in, they created puppet shows looking at the value and importance of water in their life. And those are written, but my class was sent home due to a COVID outbreak, and we have not been back in school. So the last 2 years, both World Water Days were celebrated remotely. We have been journaling. They had a water tower this year. So we've been looking at hydroponics and growing food in our classroom and nature journaling in the schoolyard. And that's my work.
Thank you, Adrienne. So inspiring as usual. And having attended a number of your World Water Days over the years, I can absolutely attest to how engaging they are and how memorable they are. And I've got to admit, a couple of years there, we were able to partner and bring my teacher candidates together with your students to run these so more people in the school could access them. And they're really just a fabulous way to get students engaged in these issues, so learning about these issues, and then sharing. I think this is the important part, sharing their learning with others. So really exciting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, in terms of people who are interested in it, it's been, again, just the most rewarding experiences. And I'm writing a paper right now with the Shanghai Partnership and talking about teacher collaboration. And it's really got to be one of the best, the most incredible way to learn and develop as a teacher is to do that kind of collaboration and working together and getting ideas. So it's been
I agree with you. I completely agree with you, because that's how I've been learning so much from all of you on this action research team, no doubt. So I'd like to introduce you to our third and final group. They're actually going to present together, Linda and Catherine. Catherine Kurtz is a secondary science and geography teacher in the Toronto District School Board, and formerly the environmental education coordinator for the Thames Valley District School Board. She was involved in the design and implementation of EcoSpark's Nature Academy program. And Catherine's passionate about outdoor learning with her students. And you are seeing a pattern here on our action research team that Catherine's also one of the environmental education specialists that have gone through all three parts of the additional qualification courses. Linda Ryan's a secondary school teacher, secondary science, teacher with the Peel District School Board and formerly with the Toronto District School Board. As an EcoSchools co-chair, an environmental science teacher, and an Envirothon team mentor, she enjoys inspiring students in environmental learning. And I will also point out that Linda's also one of our grads from the AQ courses, and in fact, has come back now to help teach the AQ courses in environmental education. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Are we good with screen share?
Looks good.
We are.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much, Hilary. I'm Linda, and Catherine is in the window. And we wanted to start by just giving you the context for our action research topics. We have both been involved with a citizen science project called Changing Currents, which is a program facilitated by EcoSpark, an environmental NGO in Toronto. And it gets kids out into the environment and performing real world scientific studies, examining the water quality in their local streams. So the kids follow a scientific protocol set up by the Ontario benthic biomonitoring network. They get into the stream, they assess the physical characteristics, they measure chemical and physical parameters. But the real magic of the program is when they get into the water with hip waders and D-nets, and they do transects across the riverbed, disturbing the substrate and releasing the little benthic macroinvertebrates, little critters and bugs that live in the water. They collect the samples, rinse their nets, and then they count and assess the diversity of the bugs that they find. And this is it's just such an engaging opportunity. The kids absolutely love it. You can see a group of my kids there working with pipettes to collect the little bugs. And from that collection of bugs, they then assess the water quality, looking at the number and the diversity and the sensitivity to pollution of the bugs that they find. So Catherine and I have found that this has been one of the most engaging environmental activities and out in nature activities we do with kids, and we really wanted to explore how we could deepen this.
Yeah, so our research questions, as Linda said, I had observed these field trips were consistently a highlight in the science classes for my students. So I was interested in how they were engaging and why they were connecting to this activity.
And I was interested in looking at how I could take the program and deepen the impact with groups of my students in science and environmental science.
And I began my research a little bit before Linda. I was on a leave of absence. So my methods are a little atypical of action research in that teachers are often in their own classroom. And I had been doing this activity with my students for years. But now on my leave, I had this opportunity to visit a number of other teachers' outdoor classrooms, which was amazing. And I could observe and see what their students were experiencing and seeing if there was any commonalities between what I had seen. So I would join in the program and just observe their activities and conversations. I would ask students questions. It was a lot more casual, as you were saying, Adrienne. When you're, interviewing, it might be a little bit on the spot and them trying to give you the answers you want. But I would just kind of casually ask them questions about it as they participated. And so what I noticed with the intermediate students, and these observations are generalities, they don't speak for all of them, but just in general, the trend that I noticed was that most of them were expressing that they hadn't done science outdoors very much. And I was finding that their affective experience was very important for the engagement. So when I asked them what they thought of it, they often talked about their feelings. One student I remember saying, I can breathe outside of the classroom, and it often dealt with that aspect. And I saw them taking a really playful approach to learning. It was really not very much work for the teacher to engage them at all. It was just providing the setting. And kids started doing self-directed spontaneous inquiries after their official teacher-led stream study was completed. And this was of their own volition, that they were just really interested and engaged. As part of visiting with many classrooms, I was lucky to come upon a little comparison. One teacher brought their student out 2 different times for 2 different types of outdoor experiences. So the first one was in the fall, and it was a more passive experience. The students were told to wait at the picnic tables, and the teacher went down to the stream and brought them samples of water, and they could complete chemical water tests on it. And then the second time, the teacher brought the students out in the spring, and this time they were allowed a really hands-on active experience. And the students got to go into the stream, gather their own samples. They were looking at the bugs, collecting them and examining them. And not surprising, most reported that the active experience was much more enjoyable, and that it was important for them in seeing more and learning more than when they did the pre-collected samples. Now, I also looked at classes with senior students, and I experienced a different feeling with them. They were much more tentative, but Linda's going to talk a little bit more about discussing wanting to extend and deepen the experience for her senior students. So we're going to go to the next slides and look at that.
Yeah, so as Catherine mentioned, I came into the action research team a little bit later, and it had always been a question of mine, like, how can I increase the impact of this program, which I know is already impactful. So I was interested in trying to give kids multiple opportunities to see if that would increase the engagement And then just happenstance, I had to actually had the opportunity to also see the impact of full day sort of extended studies versus the typical half day study that we usually do with the changing currents. So I worked with a number of different groups of students. The groups are listed here. I started with my grade 11 chemistry kids. I took them to a full day excursion in a conservation area in Mississauga. Then these students had the opportunity to come back in the fall and to go on a trip to Terracotta, a local conservation area. And there they did a full SHSM certification. So they went a little bit deeper with the training. They got the specialist high skill secondary certificate in water quality monitoring. I also had worked with my grade 11 environmental science students. They also participated in the same Terracotta SHSM trip. And then later in the season, we had an opportunity to go out and do a study in an urban setting about 10 minutes away from the school, where we went to a culvert underneath a major roadway in the community, and we assessed the bugs there. And then this year, things kind of came to a halt last spring and this year because of COVID. But EcoSpark is now offering virtual stream studies. They pivoted very, very smartly. So we had a group of students participate in a virtual half-day stream study, students from my environmental club and students from grade 9 and 10 science. And although it's true that the interviews can sometimes give you a bit of a skewed perception, we did want to have that opportunity to try and tease out the socio emotional impact that the excursions had. So we did hour-long group interviews with the kids, and it was relatively informal. We were just a discussion. We had questions, and the kids had the opportunity to just comment or not comment as they felt free to do so. So some of the things that we noticed regarding the repeat excursions and the half day versus the long day excursions, that having the opportunity to go out and do the study more than once really increased their level of confidence, their enjoyment of the activity. And our students that we had in the spring, then coming out in the fall again, they really enjoyed acting as mentors. So they had this knowledge because they understood how the process worked. So they ended up becoming leaders in the different subgroups we had working in the stream, and that really had a large impact for them. The comparison of going out, to a natural environment versus their local environment was also really impactful. The kids expressed real surprise that they could walk to a local bridge and go underneath it and find a river and find bugs and the same bugs that they actually found out in the conservation area. So they talked about that. Now I know that this stream is there. I'm going to go out and go for walks. It really increased sort of their connection to the local environment, which was great. The full day, more relaxed experience, the deeper experience, really enhanced their enjoyment and their understanding of the process and what they were doing. And this was really closely tied to their social feelings during the environment. During the experience, they felt that being out in the environment with their friends really made it more impactful for them, and it really enhanced their enjoyment of being out in nature when they were doing it with everybody. So the virtual versus the hands-on experience was also a bit of an eye-opener for us. I think both Catherine and I, going into the experience, felt that it was going to be not a very motivating experience for the kids. The kids found that it was a very good knowledge-building activity. They found that they understood the process. They enjoyed having the opportunity to assess their understanding by applying it to some real-world data that was presented at the end of the training session. And interestingly enough, we had a number of kids that had done stream studies in elementary school. And they said that it was a bit of an aha moment when they did the virtual study, because they hadn't really understood what they had done. They really had enjoyed going out into the environment and playing around in the water, but hadn't really understood the purpose of it. So having done the training virtually, they understood now why they were doing the training and what it meant. And this really actually sparked desire for our kids to go out and investigate water quality. And we actually had the plan to go out and do some samples and before shutdown. So that hopefully is something we might be able to do in the future if we actually get back in school. But one key thing that was missing with the virtual experience was that affective component. So one of my students had actually joined the activity because her older sister had done the full day study in terracotta and had really encouraged her to go because it was so much fun. And the older sister actually commented it was really sad for her that she wasn't able to do the outdoor study. So we thought that was quite interesting. So sort of looking at summarizing what Catherine and I have found, for me, I'm really interested now in combining sort of virtual training with a hands-on excursion. I think one real advantage of the virtual training is that it's led by an EcoSpark mentor, so they have the chance to connect with that expert in the environment, environmental studies, and it provides that background knowledge that really allows them to understand what they're doing and helps them to focus their activity when they're out in the environment. I really want to continue doing repeat excursions and do a combination of excursions in the local community and in other environments to really try and increase that engagement and interest in being out in the environment and to spark interest in taking action for the environment.
And starting to extend into project-based learning just to deepen the experience even more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to, it's really been a great eye-opening experience for us, sort of formalizing what we're doing in our studies with the stream studies.
Thank you so much, Linda and Catherine. That was fantastic. And, you know, reflecting deeply on our practice as educators is so important. Listening carefully to our students. And there's no doubt, you're right, Linda, that I think that when you do that, when you spend that time in an hour-long focus group with them, that you listen differently than when you're immersed in delivering a lesson to them in a classroom, right? So, so important. If you'd like a little bit more information about the Action Research Team, and I did say earlier at the start, it is a very unique endeavor. We've done some research and a literature review about Action Research Teams. We've only found one or two others in the world. So this is a very unusual Action Research Team because of its focus on environmental and sustainability education. And I feel so lucky to be working alongside such dedicated teacher researchers. I mean, there's no doubt this adds extra to what you're doing in your classroom. And so for these teachers to take the time to deepen their understanding and to share that understanding with others is really important. So we're trying to do that to support them through publications. There is a Green Teacher magazine article called Natural Collaborations, hence the name of this session today, that will help others if you want to learn a little bit more about it. And you're, of course, more than welcome to reach out to any of us about our research. We're happy to share a little bit more about that, about the AQ courses, the additional qualification courses here in Ontario, as well as about the Action Research Team itself. So thank you to all of you. With that, I'm just going to end the recording. If I can find where to do that. And what I'd